I always thought nothing truly surprising could happen in Cedar Hollow. It's the kind of small Oregon town where people wave from their porches without looking up, where gossip moves faster than the mail, and where life feels the same on Monday as it does on Sunday. So when my phone rang that morning, I didn't expect my entire world to tilt. "Is this Maya Turner?" The voice was crisp, professional. "Yes, this is Parker and Sloan Law Group. We need you to come in today regarding the estate of your uncle, Daniel Whitlock." I almost laughed. My uncle died 12 years ago. A pause then. "No, Miss Turner. He passed away 3 days ago." The room around me tilted. I sat down on the edge of my bed, my pulse suddenly loud in my ears. Daniel Whitlock. Mom's older brother. The family ghost. The man we never talked about. He'd vanished from our lives when I was a kid, not dead, not missing, just gone. A quiet exile. And now he was really gone. "Why are you calling me?" I asked carefully. "We'll explain when you arrive. It is urgent." The call ended. And something in me, curiosity, dread, maybe both, pushed me toward the door. The law office. Parker and Sloan sat on Main Street, wedged between a thrift shop and a bakery that always smelled like warm cinnamon. Safe. Familiar. Ordinary. But the way the receptionist looked at me wasn't ordinary at all. "Miss Turner?" She whispered, like saying my name too loud might break something. She led me to a conference room. Inside, an older lawyer in a slate-gray suit rose and extended his hand. "I'm Jonathan Sloan. Please sit." On the table lay a thin file folder and a brass key. "Your uncle left a will," Sloan began. "He designated you as his sole beneficiary." I blinked. "That makes no sense. I haven't seen him in 20 years. "Be that as it may," Sloan said gently, "you inherited his property, a house on Old Mill Road." He slid the key toward me. "And a safe." "A safe?" "Yes. A small steel safe he kept in his... Old Mill Road sits at the edge of Cedar Hollow like a boundary line the town pretends not to see. No sidewalks. No neighbors close enough to hear you knock. Just pine trees, old power poles, and the smell of damp earth after rain. When I turned onto the gravel driveway, my headlights caught the house for the first time, my uncle's house. Paint peeling. Porch sagging slightly. Curtains drawn even though no one lived here now. It didn't feel abandoned. It felt watched. I parked, stepped out, and the gravel under my boots popped like brittle bones. The air was colder here. Still. As if the house held its breath. The brass key Sloan gave me felt heavy in my pocket. Not just metal heavy, meaning heavy. History heavy. I walked up the porch steps. Each one groaned under my weight, complaining about my presence. When I reached the door, something made me pause. A faint scratch mark near the lock. Fresh. Like someone tried to pick it. The kind of detail you only notice when you're scared enough to pay attention. I slid the key in. The lock turned too easily, like it had already been opened recently. Inside, the house smelled like old wood and dust, but something else too. A faint chemical scent. Like antiseptic wipes. The living room was tidy in a way that didn't match the exterior. Furniture neatly covered with white sheets, books stacked on the table, an old rotary phone on the wall. My uncle lived simply. Quietly. But with intention. I moved through the room slowly, taking everything in. Nothing looked ransacked, but something felt off. Too clean. Too curated. Like someone had reset the space to neutral. In the study, the air felt heavier. A large wooden desk sat under the window, and on the floor, the faint outline of dust marked a square shape. The missing safe. They took it. But not long ago. I knelt beside the dust outline. A single object lay in the corner, half under the desk. A brass washer. Not from the safe. From a tool. A lockpick tool. I slipped it into my pocket. Behind me, a floorboard creaked. I turned sharply, breath caught in my throat, but it was only the house settling. Or so I told myself. On the desk sat a small black notebook. Worn. Edges frayed. My uncle's handwriting on the first page. If Maya finds this, I failed. My fingers trembled as I turned the page. I've tried for months to get the court to hear me. But someone inside the county keeps shutting everything down. They know what I found. They want the safe. The moment the call ended, the silence around the house felt wrong in a way I can't explain. Not just quiet, expectant, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath, waiting for what I'd do next. My shoes crunched over the gravel as I backed away from the porch, one slow step at a time. The darkness between the pines felt thicker, heavier, like someone had poured shadow across Old Mill Road. I reached my car door, hand trembling over the handle. Then I heard it. A sharp click. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just mechanical. Like a latch. Or a camera. I froze. The sound came from the tree line to my right, too close, too deliberate to be an animal. A cold ripple crawled up my spine, and I scanned the darkness, eyes adjusting, heart pounding against my ribs. Nothing. No movement. No silhouette. No flashlight beam. Just the sense of being watched. I got into the car and locked the doors so fast the motion felt like instinct, not choice. The engine roared to life, headlights cutting across the house's exterior. That's when I noticed something I hadn't seen on the way in. Tire tracks. Fresh. Not mine. Leading from the road, up to the side of the house. Someone had been parked on the property. Recently. Maybe minutes ago. The caller wasn't warning me about a future danger. They were warning me about a present one. I reversed down the driveway, gravel spraying beneath my tires. The house disappeared behind the trees as quickly as it had appeared. Once I reached the road, I finally let out a trembling breath. The phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time, I didn't hesitate. "Who are you?" I whispered. A voice answered. This one younger, nervous, fast. "Maya, don't hang up. I can't talk long. Tell me what's going on. You need to understand, your uncle didn't die of natural causes. And the safe, someone in Cedar Hollow wanted what was inside." "Who?" The line crackled. "I can't say. They'll trace it." "Why warn me at all?" My voice shook. "Why risk calling?" A shaky exhale. "Because your uncle trusted you. And because you're already in danger." The static grew louder. "Maya, whatever you do, don't go to the clinic. Not yet." There. The call cut off so sharply it felt like a blade slicing the line. I stared at the phone, heart thundering. The clinic. The place tied to forged receipts in my name. The place my uncle investigated before he died. The place he said was part of something bigger. I drove toward town, headlights carving through the fog, brain racing. If someone had been watching the house tonight. If someone had broken in to steal the safe. If someone used my name inside the clinic. Then this wasn't a mystery anymore. It was a hunt. And I wasn't sure if I was the hunter. Or the next target. As I reached the edge of Cedar Hollow, the clinic's pale blue sign glowed faintly in the distance like an eye watching me through the dark. I slowed the car. The caller said not to go there. But everything, was pointing straight toward that building. And someone inside knew I was coming. The Cedar Hollow Medical Center looks harmless during the day, pale blue walls, a small flag out front, windows so clean they almost shine. But at night, lit only by parking lot lamps and the glow of exit signs, it feels like a different creature entirely. A creature that doesn't blink. I pulled into the far corner of the lot, engine off, letting the darkness fold around me. The clinic sat quiet, too quiet, like it was pretending to sleep. But the lights in the administrative wing were still on. Someone was working late. Or someone didn't want to leave. I watched the building for a moment, breath fogging up the windshield. The caller said not to come here. But the forged documents, the fake receipt in my name, the missing safe, everything pointed to this place like gravity pulling me in. I stepped out of the car, moving quietly across the cracked asphalt. The automatic doors were locked for the night, but the side entrance, the staff door, had a keypad glowing faintly. That wasn't the strange part. The strange part was that the frame around it looked scraped. Metal on metal. Like someone had pried it open before. Someone who didn't want to be logged. I walked along the side of the building, staying close to the wall. My footsteps softened on the damp ground, the smell of disinfectant drifting faintly from the vents. When I reached the back of the clinic, I froze. A single security light flickered behind a dumpster. And beneath it, scattered across the concrete, lay shredded paper, dozens of pieces, torn violently into strips. I knelt, picking up one piece. A fragment of a medical form. My name on it. Another piece, my address. Another, a clinic stamp. They hadn't forged documents. They'd made them. And then tried to destroy them. But the wind had other plans. I gathered as many pieces as I could, heart pounding, trying to arrange the scraps in my hands. One line jumped out. Patient advised of irregularity found in. The rest of the sentence was gone, torn away. Irregularity. In what? Blood work? MRI? Identity? Every possibility tasted worse than the last. Then a noise. Soft. A click. Same sound as near the house. A camera. Or a latch. Or someone stepping out of the shadows. I shot to my feet. At the edge of the clinic wall stood a silhouette. Tall. Still. Holding something small and rectangular. A phone. Recording me. Who are you? I called out, voice trembling but sharp. The figure didn't answer. They didn't move. They just stood there, silent, watching as if waiting to see what I would do. I took one step toward them. They lifted the phone higher. Then, without a word, they turned and slipped into the darkness behind the clinic, disappearing between the trees. I ran after them, rounding the corner. Nothing. No footsteps. No rustling branches. Just emptiness. Like they'd vanished into the ground. My phone buzzed suddenly, making me gasp. Unknown number. Of course, I answered. A whisper hissed through the speaker, fast and terrified. Maya, leave. Now. You're being set up. My chest tightened. Set up for what? For breaking into the clinic. They're watching you. They're recording you. My breath hitched. The figure with the phone. What do they want? I didn't drive home that night. Home wasn't safe anymore. Not when someone at the clinic was pretending to be me. Not when a shadow figure was recording me behind the building. Not when anonymous callers kept warning me to run. So instead, I parked behind the Cedar Hollow Public Library where I worked. My key still opened the staff door. The lights were off, the silence thick. But at least here, I could breathe. Inside, I spread the torn clinic papers across a wooden table, trying to piece together what was left. Some fragments were blank. Some had only numbers. A few had dates. But one strip, just one, made my stomach twist. Cross-reference. W. Case. 341 file sealed. W. Case. Whitlock. My uncle. I leaned back, heart hammering. The clinic wasn't just forging my records. They were hiding his. I opened his black notebook again, flipping to the last pages. He had written 3 attempts to file the petition. All denied before reaching the judge. They sealed the W case without authorization. Someone in the clinic changed my diagnosis. Diagnosis. The same word from one of the shredded pieces. A picture was forming, ugly, crooked, terrifying. They had marked him as unstable. Just like the caller said they'd try to do to me. I was following the same footsteps he had tried to trace. And someone was trying to make sure I didn't reach the end of the path. Lightning flashed outside, casting a web of shadows across the library shelves. I froze. A silhouette crossed the frosted glass of the front entrance. Slow. Deliberate. Tall. Someone was there. Watching the door. Facing inside. Not moving. My skin prickled. I stepped behind one of the tall bookshelves, breathing quietly through my nose. The silhouette stayed still, like it was listening. Then, tap. Just one tap. Knuckles against the glass. I shut my eyes. Another tap. Then a voice, muffled through the door. Maya, we need to talk. My blood ran cold. I knew that voice. Sheriff Dalton Reed. Cedar Hollow's law in a uniform. A man my mother had trusted since I was a kid. A man who coached Little League, broke up bar fights, wrote parking tickets. A man who was on every clinic board photo hanging in the hallway. I stayed behind the shelves silent. Open the door, he called. I know you're in there. My heart thudded. He shouldn't know I was here. No one should. Unless someone had already told him. Unless someone from the clinic had called him. Unless the trap wasn't just set. It was closing. I didn't answer. He tapped the glass again, harder this time. Maya, please. You're making this worse. Let me help you. Help. That poison word again. Help like the clinic helped my uncle. Help like the doctor helped by forging receipts in my name. Help like the shadow outside the safe house helped by watching silently. Another flash of lightning. Sheriff Reed leaned closer to the glass, his outline sharp and unmistakable. Running around at night, snooping in places you shouldn't be. His tone shifted, turning colder. Your uncle acted like this too. Before he collapsed. Rain hit my face so hard it felt like gravel, but I didn't stop. Not when Sheriff Reed was behind me. Not when the clinic was watching. Not when Cedar Hollow itself felt like it had turned against me. The trees behind the library were thick, dark silhouettes bending under the storm. Branches whipped in the wind, wet leaves slapping my arms as I pushed deeper into the woods. The only light came from distant street lamps bleeding through the fog. Every few seconds I looked over my shoulder. Nothing. No flashlight beam. No silhouette. No pursuit. Which scared me more than seeing him would have. People like Reed didn't give up. Not like that. Not when they were working under someone else's orders. The mud sucked at my shoes as I climbed a small hill behind the baseball field. At the top, I paused, catching my breath. That's when I saw him. Not Reed. Not a cop. Not someone from the clinic. A man stood at the base of the hill. Lean, hooded, motionless, outlined by a weak streetlight. He wasn't hiding. He was waiting. And he was facing me. I froze. The wind bent the trees around us, but he didn't move an inch. His hoodie dripped with rain. His head was slightly tilted, as if he were studying me like an equation. My throat tightened. Who are you? I called out. No answer. Just the rain. The man lifted his hand slowly, not in threat, but in warning. He pressed a finger to where his mouth would be beneath the hood. Quiet. I staggered back a step. What do you want? I whispered. This time he moved. Not toward me, but sideways, revealing a narrow service road I hadn't seen. A gravel path that cut behind the clinic's rear lot and disappeared into the pines. He pointed at it. Then at me. Go. My pulse kicked into overdrive. Why? I whispered. The man lifted his sleeve, just enough to show a hospital wristband. My breath caught. He'd been a patient. Recently. At the same clinic. He pulled his hood lower and vanished down the path, footsteps barely audible over the storm. I didn't have time to think. Didn't have time to fear. Something inside me, instinct, desperation, or maybe courage I didn't know I had, told me to follow. The service road was narrow, half hidden under overgrown branches, puddles reflecting flashes of lightning. I followed his trail deeper into the woods, breathing hard, the cold cutting through my clothes. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. Time felt stretched thin, like the storm had swallowed it whole. Finally, the man stopped near a metal fence, tall, rusty, topped with bent barbed wire. He pointed again. Past the fence. Toward a low concrete building almost completely swallowed by vines and moss. A storage facility. Unlabeled. Unlit. Forgotten. Except by the clinic. The man turned his wrist again, showing the band, tapping it twice. Then he mimed a safe. A box. Something small. Square. My stomach flipped. The missing safe. My uncle's safe. It wasn't stolen. It was hidden. Right here. The man took one step back. The fence was old enough that the metal felt soft under my hands, like it had been rusting since before I was born. A few sections were bent near the bottom, not by animals, not by weather. By someone crawling under. Someone who needed to get in quietly. Someone like my uncle. I dropped to my knees, slid beneath the warped opening, and the wet earth smeared across my clothes as the storm finally began to ease. The trees above stopped thrashing. The air felt heavier, almost expectant. The concrete building loomed in front of me, windowless, squat, industrial. No markings. No signs. Just a blank, gray shell hiding something it wasn't supposed to hide. I approached the metal door. No lock. Just a handle. Which made it worse. Someone confident enough not to lock the door wasn't protecting the outside world from the building. They were protecting the inside from attention. I pushed it open. The hinges groaned like they hadn't been oiled in years. Inside, the air hit me cold, sterile, chemical. Like a clinic storage room. But abandoned. Rows of metal shelves lined the walls. Dust everywhere. Except one shelf was clean. Wiped. The surface almost shiny compared to the rest. A square outline marked where something had been. Something heavy. Something metal. The missing safe. My chest tightened. They had moved it. But when? Before my uncle died? After? Right before the lawyers did inventory? A drip echoed from somewhere deeper in the building. I followed the sound, my footsteps slow and deliberate. At the back of the storage room, half hidden behind a toppled shelving unit, I found a small wooden desk. Not clinic-issued. Not modern. A personal desk. My uncle's handwriting covered a stack of papers. I reached for the top page and froze. Every sheet had been slashed with a box cutter. Not torn. Not ripped. Cut clean. Precise. Deliberate destruction. But one page had been missed, stuck between two cut sheets. I pulled it out with trembling fingers. It was a clinic ledger. Patient number codes. Dates. Procedures. And a line that made the floor tilt under my feet. Whitlock, Daniel, test results inconsistent, override required, send to Case W, 341. Case W, 341. Same code from the shredded papers at the clinic. Same code they sealed before he could reach the judge. My uncle didn't have a medical issue. He had evidence. Before I could process what I was holding, I heard a sound from the doorway. A long, slow exhale. I turned. Sheriff Reed stood silhouetted in the entrance. Rain dripping from his hat. Hand resting on his belt. Not on his gun. Not yet. But close. Maya, he said quietly, you weren't supposed to find this place. My pulse hammered so hard I could barely hear myself breathe. How did you? He stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a soft metallic thud. I've been cleaning up Whitlock's mess for a long time, he said. Long before he came to you. He took one step closer. For your own sake, put the paper down. I sprinted deeper into the building, Reed's footsteps slamming the concrete behind me, echoing like gunshots even though no weapons were drawn. The air grew colder. Darker. Narrow hallways splitting like veins under the clinic. Behind me Reed shouted, Maya, don't make this harder. Harder. He said it like I was inconveniencing paperwork. I ducked into a narrow corridor lit only by a single emergency bulb pulsing with weak red light. My breath came sharp, fast, painful. But I kept moving. At the end of the corridor stood a steel door, heavy, industrial, marked with an old hazard sticker too faded to read. My uncle's safe had been here. I could feel it. Like the air still remembered. When I pushed the door, it groaned open. Inside was a small concrete room. No shelves. No boxes. Just a table. And on that table, a thick binder wrapped in plastic. The hairs on my arms rose. This wasn't forgotten. This was hidden. I grabbed the binder, ripping the plastic apart with shaking hands. Inside, clinic records. Financial sheets. Diagnosis overrides. False signatures. And then, the page that froze my lungs. Case W, 341, Whitlock, Daniel. Status, deceased. Cause of death, administrative override approved by Sheriff Reed. A clean kill. Buried under paperwork. They hadn't covered up a medical crisis. They'd covered up a murder. I backed away from the binder, my knees almost giving out. My uncle hadn't been paranoid. He hadn't been unstable. He had been right. Someone in Cedar Hollow had found something dangerous in that clinic, something Reed needed erased, and my uncle paid the price. Reed's voice echoed from the hall. Maya, step away from the records. He was close. Too close. I grabbed the binder, clutching it against my chest. It was heavy, not just with paper. With truth. I bolted from the room, darting past broken shelves and stacks of old equipment. Reed's flashlight beam cut across the hallway behind me. Stop. You don't understand what you're about to ruin. I didn't look back. I hit the emergency exit door with my shoulder. It flew open, and cold night air slammed into me like a wave. I tumbled outside into the mud, scrambling to my feet as Reed burst through the doorway a second later. But he stopped. Because he wasn't alone anymore. 2 county deputies stepped out from the forest trail, guns holstered, but hands ready. And behind them, Jonathan Sloan, the lawyer. He held up a phone. "I recorded everything," he said calmly. "Sheriff, drop your weapon." Reed's face twisted, shock, anger, disbelief all colliding at once. "You don't know what she has." Reed barked. "She's unstable." "Enough," Sloan snapped. "We know about the overrides. We know about the sealed files. We know what happened to Daniel Whitlock.